Once again, welcome to Insights with Dr. Val-Addo. We are back on our general focus, which is the overview of 400 years history of Africans in the US. And in today's presentation, we're going to look at Africans in America and social development in US history. How Africans in America developed socially or issues of social development in US history. As a reminder, slavery had been abolished in the US, and the US Supreme Court had reversed itself in 1954 of the segregation aspect of its previous ruling. Yet, issues dealt with legally were still existent in one form or the other in American society. They included stereotyping or prejudices. They somehow became institutionalized or cemented as racism through discrimination or segregation. There was the segregation of schools, buses, drinking fountains, and others. There were also police pullovers, frisking or search, brutalities, and incarcerations of many male Negroes. Reasons given by Africans in America were stereotyping, lack of standard education and facilities, poverty, and drugs. While Caucasian Americans involved in drugs were sent to rehabilitation centers, suggesting the prevalence of discrimination. Euro-American Christianity and Protestant churches and the idea of choice of continuing with a slave master after emancipation and abolition of slavery continued. Now, why issues dealt with legally still persisted in one form or the other in American society was that they never wanted to give up. Now, what was the responses to these issues that were emerging, issues that were not given in, even though legally they were abolished, slavery and segregation and all that were abolished? One, the response to the aforementioned issues persistent in American society led to the emergence of the civil rights movement between the 1950s and the 1960s. Prominent Africans in America who questioned Euro-American Caucasian Christianity in the beginning of the era of civil rights included Malcolm X. Another prominent African in America who took an Old Testament and Islamic name was Elijah Muhammad. Elijah Muhammad's view of an aspect of the civil rights, which was more religious, led to the founding of an American Islamic group called the Nation of Islam. It is different from the Orthodox and Pakistan Islam, but they wanted to deviate from the European American Protestant Christianity because they were against them and promoted slavery. The preachers and teachers of the Nation of Islam combined the Bible and Quran to teach and to promote civil rights. The current leader of the Nation of Islam is Minister Louis Farrakhan. Listeners are reminded that the founding and existence of the Nation of Islam was a reaction to Euro-American Caucasian Christianity. It cannot be a reaction to true biblical Christianity based on the true interpretation and application of the Old and New Testaments. Now, I would like to quote Romans chapter 3, verse 3 to 4a. It provides an answer to those who misuse and misapply Christianity. Verse 3 of Romans chapter 3. What if some did not believe? Will their unbelief make the faithfulness of God without effect? The Apostle Paul answered in verse 4, certainly not. Indeed, let God be true, but every man a liar. Now, we want you to know that what was being preached by American Protestant Christians were not biblical. And so the reaction of the nation of Islam against true Christianity cannot hold water. Remember, Christianity is not a white man's religion, and the Bible is not a white man's book, as some Africans came to believe and labeled them because of how European and American Protestant churches treated Africans with Christianity and the Bible. What we should not forget is that Charles Simpson said. When Christianity left Israel, it was a way of life. In Greece, it became a philosophy. In Rome, it became a system. In Europe, it became a culture. In Germany, it became a theology. In America, it has become an enterprise. Everybody has added something to it. End of quote. Europe added racism and slavery as a business venture to Christianity and transported it to America, where it also became an enterprise. America added segregation to it to further misuse and abuse Christianity. Prominent Christian Africans in America who led the civil rights movement was Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. He was a young Negro Baptist pastor. His approach to civil rights were non-violent, peaceful protests and civil disobedience or boycotts by some workers and very thoughtful public speeches. He led the Selma, Alabama civil protest walk. His civil rights speeches included the popular "I Have a Dream" speech. He was, however, assassinated on April 4th, 1968, at an early age of 39. In 1970, an American Caucasian and African American by name Columbus Sally and Roland Baum co-authored a book, Your God is Too White, and it's worth reading to capture what had gone on and was going on and may be going on at this time, even after several years of emancipation and abolition of slavery. Some achievements of the civil rights movement were school admissions had to be a mixture of Caucasians and Negroes. Another achievement was the affirmative action, which was an admission policy to American universities which should include Negroes and not only Caucasians or whites. There was also the work employment policy, which should include proportion of Negroes and also Caucasians or white people. Now, there were other issues, and one of them is the identity and name change of Africans in America. They were one known as Negroes. Then later, they became as Afro-Americans. Then their name changed to colored people or people of color, and that was the third name. Then it changed to a fourth one, which was African American with a hyphen, and some protested that they are not hyphenated people, which makes sense. So there was the fifth name, which is African Americans with no hyphen, and some now choose to call themselves blacks. Now, this presenter has been using the term Africans in America, and it could refer to African Americans and all newer generations of Africans in America. He also prefers African Americans with no hyphenation to blacks, which projects color description and continues to promote racism. Now, let's look at the continuation of the civil rights movement. The civil rights continued by pastors and non-church reverends who were activists and promoted activism in communities to sustain the civil rights momentum. Now, let's look at church and race relations. At this time, there was still the segregation in churches going on, and some tried to promote the church and race relations. And I want to mention in particular what is referred to as the Memphis Revival. The Memphis Revival was the admission of some Caucasian American Pentecostal organizations and their pastors of racism in the church. Even after civil rights, they apologized to their African American counterparts, chose to wash their feet, and to pursue race relations in the church for building bridges. While that was laudable and historic organizational move, some individuals remain unhinged through lack of multicultural and intercultural church setups and leadership, through church affiliations and ministerial credentialing. That means some people continue to remain unhinged or to promote whatever they were focused on, promoting segregation and other things, without promoting multicultural and intercultural church setups. And leadership was confined to them only through church affiliations and ministerial credentials. Though younger Caucasian generations and immigrant Christians have embraced multicultural church organizations, older American Caucasian generations and churches do not like them. It is like seeking to change their foundation of Christianity and church ideas and theology. Older Caucasian churches, denominations, and fellowships of churches and their ministers who embrace church affiliations and credentialing of older and newer Africans in America do so as invitation to join them and not being part of them, and also to join them exclusively for their financial benefits, sustenance of their dwindling church membership, and leadership control. There are no intercultural exchange of ideas and benefits. You either become one of them, embrace their culture in Christianity, or you are not part of them. They rather promote Brownistic congregationalism. What I mean by that is, it is the equivalent of secular kind of public democracy introduced into the church, where every member of the church is asked to contribute or say his mind in the church. This has affected several African churches to plateau, dwindle, fall into anarchy, and finally to disintegration or to disintegrate. These are all indicative that elements of racism and superiority still exist in American church structures and elections to positions of power. In conclusion, the Akan tribe in Ghana, in West Africa, have a proverb that the tetefry, a bug, usually found in the woods, will always have blood remain in the head. Why? Because it needs that to survive. But there is a way to kill a butterfly, that is that bug, which settles on someone's body to suck its blood to survive. We are not to be ignorant or naive, but to do what Scripture says in Jude chapter 1 verse 22. And I quote, "And some have compassion, making a difference." That means we have to make a difference of people who call themselves Christians and misuse and abuse Christianity for their own benefit and superiority, maintaining the status quo and the power echelon. And so, if you want to continue receiving insights with Dr. Val-Addo, please click the subscribe button and press the notification bell. Click the share to send to others. And please, if you have any question or a comment, leave it below this presentation. God bless you.